money really buy happiness? Researchers have spent years digging into this topic. On the surface, it does look like people with higher earnings are happier, but there's more to the story. Here to explain is Elizabeth Dunn, a psychology professor and co-author of the book Happy Money. Elizabeth, thanks very much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So what matters in terms of money and happiness aside from just the sheer amount of money you have?
Well, I think so many of us focus on how much money we have, but some of our newest research suggests that what might matter more is actually how we spend that money, whether we have a little bit or a lot of it.
Now, you actually did an experiment where you gave a bunch of college kids some money and you said, look, some of you guys go spend this on yourselves, some of you guys go spend it on other people. How did that work out?
Well, when we called them back that night and asked them how happy they were, we found that students who had been randomly assigned, basically by the flip of a coin, to spend the money on somebody else were significantly happier than people who had been told to spend the money on themselves.
So it must give you a pretty good indication that if you spend money on other people, it actually might make you feel better than buying a bunch of crap for yourself?
Amazingly, yes. And this isn't something that's entirely intuitive for people. Most of us tend to spend most of our money on ourselves. But in fact, our research shows over and over again, people actually get more happiness from spending the money on somebody else.
Now, the other thing that you point out in your story that's going to be on WSJ.com tomorrow is that one of the things we can use our money for that will really make us happy is to buy time. Explain to me what you mean by that.
Well, many of our purchases really have no bearing on how we spend our time. So getting a new pair of shoes or new handbag, no matter how fabulous, is not really going to influence the way that we spend our time. And yet, what psychologists are finding really matters for our happiness is the way that we spend the days and minutes of our lives, these sort of simple choices we make about how to spend our time. So we would suggest that when you're deciding whether to make a purchase, just stop and ask yourself, how will this purchase affect the way I use my time? If it's a purchase that will actually change the way you use your time for the better, give you the opportunity to do the things you enjoy, to replace some of the sort of drudgery of daily life with enjoyable activities, then we would argue that's a good use of money. That's happy money.
It also seems like that's an easier thing to do now that we have this rise of virtual services that'll pick things up for you, drop them off, do your handiwork around the house.
There's been an incredible rise in outsourcing opportunities, and the fascinating thing is that people may not take advantage of this to the extent that they should. We find in some very new research that we're still analyzing, what we're seeing is that people who outsource their dreaded tasks to others are happier, and yet people seem to have some resistance, some feeling that this is a kind of luxury to get rid of these tasks. But what we see is, people should really be thinking of it as one of the few ways that money can actually effectively increase their happiness.
Yeah, as someone who outsources my laundry, I think I'm going to have to agree with you on that. So what is the number one thing that you think people should remember when they think about, their money and how best to spend it to make them happy?
Well, I think the optimal thing is to try to break out of some of our typical spending habits and try to think about whether a purchase will really make us happy. And I think one tip I would give people is to consider buying experiences rather than material things. So often the purchases that we typically look to, from couches to houses, actually turn out not to have much bearing on our happiness. And we might be better off investing in things like that aren't things like vacations and special meals out. So something to consider for the weekend.
Really interesting research. Elizabeth Dunn, your book is Happy Money. Thanks very much for being here.
Thank you.